Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Vita Academy. I'm Chris Lappin, and join me as always I've got football coach and blogger Peter Prickett. How are you doing this evening, Peter?
I'm alright, thank you.
Shortly we'll be joined by England Futsal International Grant Osborn. You've got a real passion for futsal, so how did you first discover the sport?
My passion, if you like, has only really grown in the last year or so. But I first became aware of the sport in about 96. And so I remember picking up whatever magazine it was at the time. It may have been the tail end of my shoot days, or it may have been the beginning of my 442 days.
Yeah.
And he talked about this thing in Brazil called Futsal. And I was curious to find out more, and at that time it was quite difficult to actually find out more. So I was always curious, but found it tough to find out any more information, so my interest kind of waned a bit.
Yeah.
And then, with the internet becoming more accessible, faster, broadband, etc., it became a bit easier to find out a bit more about it. And then the opportunity arose to go on the FA courses. And from there, it's just built up to coach with a little bit of digging and a little bit of talking to people and trying to position myself. Those opportunities have arrived, and I've been in the right place to grab them, and it's just built from that. Yeah, built up from there.
Yeah, so you're a member of the Cheswick futsal team. So what's your role with the club, and can you tell us a bit about the club?
So one of the opportunities that came along was with Chiswick Futsal, and at the time I was looking for more sessions from my UEFA B.
Yeah.
And at the time they were playing in the London League and just starting out. And they said, well, do you want to do a couple of sessions for us? I'm like, okay. So I did a couple of sessions. During that time, the team applied for the National League, got accepted. So I've ended up becoming head coach for a National League 2 futsal team.
Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know much about the sports, what are the rules, basically? So how's it different to, like, five-side?
Well, sometimes in five-a-side you get some funny rules.
Yeah.
So you get things like you're not allowed in the area.
Yeah.
I don't know, if I was playing as a striker, I'd be really annoyed that I couldn't get into the business area for fear of giving away a free kick. Or as a defender, I wouldn't be allowed to do my job properly because I couldn't get in and make a block. So there's none of that in futsal. Most of the time in casual five-a-side, you just bang the ball off the wall and carry on.
Yeah.
Again, not allowed in futsal. So we have pitch markings, we have outs, we have corners, we have kick-ins rather than throw-ins, although in the Indian Premier League that we recently had, they stood throw-ins. Once you put the ball down, you've got 4 seconds to play it.
Yeah.
The goalkeeper has 4 seconds to play. The ball has to be in his hands, so he can't kick the ball in. Even if the ball's gone out of what in football would be a goal kick.
Yeah.
That's in the goalkeeper's hands for him to then dish the ball out. When you actually get into the game, it becomes tactically quite intricate. Different uses of team shape. Something that we call rotations, which in some ways is just a fancy name for a set move within a team in open play.
Yeah.
It's a trigger for movement to make sure people aren't standing still. And sometimes if you watch regular five-a-side, it can be quite static. In futsal, if it's static, something somewhere is broken, either for the attacking team or for the defending team. So the depth of tactics within futsal compared to regular five-a-side, there's no comparison.
No. I did listen to a couple of the rules. So what's is there still a rule? Is it after 5 fouls you get is it every 5 fouls you get like a 10-yard indirect free kick, or is that a...
So it's 5 fouls,
yeah,
like in basketball.
Yeah.
After 5 fouls, in basketball you go to the free throw line and you get a free shot. In futsal, you go to the 10-metre penalty line.
Yeah.
So there's two penalty lines. If you're fouled inside the box, or the area, it's a 6-metre penalty, which is basically smash it and the goalkeeper's not saving it because it's that close.
Yeah.
They don't get saved very often. And then the 10-metre penalty, which is slightly further out, and a bit more of an even contest. The comparison you might make is in hockey. So you have a penalty, and then you have a penalty corner set up as well.
Yeah.
So the penalty corner sets up giving you a free shot. And that's kind of what you might compare the two penalty kicks or two penalty spots to in futsal. There's the guaranteed goal, and then there's the one where the goalie's got a chance, more or less.
So we're delighted to be joined on the line by Grant Osborn. How are you doing this evening, Grant?
Yeah, brilliant, thanks. Very, very good.
So Grant plays for Enfield and has won 10 England caps in futsal. So a bit of background before we start. How did you get involved in futsal?
From a young age, really. I was playing five-a-side with our friends, and we had a pretty good team. A local league started up for futsal, and we didn't really know much about it, really. And once we entered it, we done very, very well. We won the league. And then the National League started, and we got invited into that, and just snowballed from there, really.
Yeah, so how was the league format set up in the UK?
So it's grown and it's developed over the last few years, and it's starting to get a little bit more serious now. You have a North and a South Super League, which have 8 teams in each, which are the strongest teams and the most sustainable, and the teams that I suppose are doing the most to promote the sport at the moment. And then below that, we've got a Northern, Midlands, and a Southern Division 2.
Yeah.
They're each, some of them have got 8, some of them are growing to a little bit more than that. But these guys, the teams in those leagues, are trying to show the FA that they can be sustainable, that they're pushing the sport, and they will be vying for a place in the Super League over the next couple of years.
So there isn't a straight promotion relegation at the moment?
No. So last year there was a kind of playoff, if you like, between the bottom team in the Super League and the top teams in the Division 2s.
Yeah.
What they've said now is that for the next 2 seasons, they're pretty much going to freeze that, so there will be no automatic promotion this year or playoff this year. But at the end of the next 2 seasons, those Super League teams who have not quite made the grade will have to fight for their place.
Yeah, so what happens at the end of the season? So like the top so many teams go into a playoff between the North and South to crown it overall?
Yeah, that's right. So the bottom team in the Super League South, they'll have to compete against the Midlands, the top team in the Midlands division, and the top 2 in the Southern Premier, the Southern Division 2.
Yeah.
That was like a 4-way game sort of thing, and fortunately for the Super League team, they managed to stay up this year, but it was very, very close. There were some very strong teams in Division 2 this year.
Alright, and how have you seen the sport grow from a supporters standpoint? Seeing the crowds grow over the years?
I think, that's an interesting one. I think over the years I probably would have expected to see it more. I think previously a lot of teams were mainly built up of a group of maybe 6 to 10 guys who enjoyed the sport from a similar community. So I don't think the fan base was too big. Now a lot of the teams are starting to produce a youth section, an academy, and do work in the community and in schools, so their fan base is starting to grow. So I think over the next couple of years, those clubs will start to thrive by having a fan base, and they'll be the ones that are in the Super League in the next few years.
Do you think one of the problems has been that a number of teams have lacked an identity? I don't mean to criticise the teams who are competing at the moment, but sometimes when you look at the team names as an outsider, there's a little bit of a process of, I don't know where that is.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and there's been a lot of discussion, especially over kind of social media and things, about the best way to go about either starting a team or changing a team. Now, I know the FA have had a bit of work to do with kind of encouraging teams to either change their name to a location or a place or something like that people can kind of identify with. Personally, I definitely think it's easier if you have a team name that's either from an area that people can relate to, because then it gives them something that they can share in, that's something that they can be passionate about. And I do agree with you that a lot of those teams with names that maybe are not as familiar to people, it can be a little bit harder to drum up interest, if you like, from local people. But so I think in the future, those teams will either need to adapt or change their name, or those other teams will start to come through, the ones with names that are in local areas and things like that.
Obviously, clubs will need a fan base, but what about the England national team itself? How well attended are those games?
Again, that's quite an interesting one. When I was playing, we'd be lucky to get maybe 200 or 300. But those are in places like Hereford, where I know it's getting bigger and things like that. But we wasn't getting a huge attendance there. But then again, if you look at some of the games that we had recently at the Copper Box, we were getting thousands, 1,000 to 2,000 people. So I think the interest is definitely there. People do want to go and see it, and it is getting bigger. And with the popularity of the sport and more people playing it, people will want to see now futsal at a higher level. So, and that's just over the last 4 years. We've seen it's almost gone up by 5 times itself, the amount of people that are coming to watch games. So there's definitely interest there, and I think the England team will be able to see that in the future as well. The fan base will definitely grow for that.
Has the increase in interest coincided with an improvement in the England team? Because those with some knowledge of futsal know that it took England quite a while to get a foothold.
Yeah, I think I think as a nation we took a brave step. We didn't wait around and think, right, we're going to build up the team until it's competitive, until we've got a league, we're going to make an England team. We jumped straight in. We started with kind of semi-professional players. We jumped in at the deep end, and I mean, when I started playing, we were 89th, I think, in the world rankings, and we're now 59th, which is still, to a lot of outsiders, they might kind of almost laugh at that. But that's a big jump in just 3 or 4 years. And I mean, for the first time, we made it preliminary round of a major tournament. That was only a couple of years ago. So we're definitely heading in the right direction. And because the leagues are getting better, because the players are getting better, because more people know it, I think the England team over time will get better.
And what is the pathway at the moment for those players who are either interested in getting into that England futsal team or have been noticed to get into that side, have caught the attention of those who are making selections?
Yeah. Again, just in the last kind of 4 years since I kind of dipped out, if you like, of the England setup, of the England first team, there's now going downwards. You have the senior team, you have the development squad, which is effectively a kind of under-23s team. Underneath that, you have the England under-19s squad, and then beneath that, you have centre of excellences. Now, that's been narrowed down to a North, Midlands, and a South, which is basically a setup of 16 to 19-year-old boys who have been either identified by their clubs or have dropped out of maybe academies or been released, who people have noticed that they've got the potential to go really, really far in the sport. So just in the last kind of 4 to 5 years, we've seen a real kind of obvious progression for players that are interested in the sport to progress up to national team level.
And what's your role been in that?
Yeah, so I think it was 2012, end of 2012, I was interviewed for a position as the under-19s southern region, if you like. We were the London-based region. Back then there were 4 regions in the south, so I was the assistant coach for that region. And then over the last kind of 2 years, year and a bit now, they've broken down or kind of condensed, if you like, the Centre of Excellences into 3. So again, we needed to apply for our jobs for that, and I'm got one of the positions as the assistant head coach, if you like, behind Ben Tadmore, and I'm joined by about 4 or 5 other coaches now as well. So we've got quite a good close knit group of very either skilled or experienced coaches that can coach at that under 19 South level.
Where are the players drawn from? Are they futsal players? Are they footballers who have certain technical elements that might be good at futsal potentially?
Yeah, so we're pretty much relying a lot on the coaches that are in the National League at the moment, who see these players week out. Schools competitions, national leagues, any player that is or has been identified to us that has maybe dropped out of an academy or been released, anyone that we see has got some potential and and has the right attributes to be a good futsal player, we bring in. And that can be whether they're 16 years old or 19 years old. So we'll take them on, we'll have a look at them, and we kind of do a quick, maybe one full day session to kind of get an idea of whether they really have a future in this path or whether they need to go away and work on a few separate things. But yeah, we're quite open to where we get the players from.
Are the majority of them actually playing regular futsal, or are some of them just playing futsal when they come to you and playing futsal most of the time?
Yeah, no. So I mean, I suppose this is kind of testament to knowing that this system works, because when I first started, about 4 years ago in that under-19s, a lot of the players weren't in National League teams. They'd maybe just heard about it and been advised to come along. They'd been dropped out of an academy or anything like that. So a lot of them hadn't really tasted futsal. They hadn't got a taste for it. Didn't really know what it was about. We had to work hard just to get them to a basic level of understanding about the sport, about the game, about the rules. For example, last year I think there was only maybe 1-2 maximum came to us with little or no knowledge about sport and about what it looked like in the UK and in England. Most of them are in National League teams. Most of them are training once or twice a week. And so the standard is much better. They come to us now with a much better understanding of where they need to be and what futsal looks like.
I understand that some are also from the futsal BTEC programs being run by the EFL.
Yeah, that's right. So at the end of the day, they are educational courses. So a lot of the people that get onto those courses do want to kind of qualify in BTEC and maybe do the futsal as a side thing. Some of them really do take the futsal seriously, and there's a great competition. There's lots of competitive games. The league's getting better. There's competitions and things like that. So those players that are good are really pushing through and are they are made aware to us. And if they are good enough, they do get invited along. And like I said, there was 1 or 2 in my Lappin group that I thought had the potential to do well. They came in and played at Enfield with me, and they got invited to the development squad. So they're 1 or 2 steps away from playing for England. So there definitely is a pathway there, and that's definitely increased the pool of players that we can select from.
In your experience, when the players come to you, what do you find that they tend to need the most? What do you find they need to learn quickly before they can really get on?
Okay, yeah, I think the most important thing is movement. The player needs to be intelligent about moving off of the ball and moving when they have the ball. I know when I first got into the England team, that was my first taste of actual, quality futsal coaching, and I was lost. I was absolutely lost. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't understand why I needed to move in a certain place or why somebody else was moving somewhere to create space for me. That was kind of new for me. A lot of the time, the players are, especially in football, they're moving because they want to receive the ball rather than I'm going to make a move to create some space for someone else. So I guess what we're really looking for, and the one kind of thing that stands out to us, is does that player understand why and when they need to move to be effective in the team game of futsal?
In the introduction, Chris asked me a couple of questions about futsal, and one of the things I spoke about was rotations. And you talk about the movement there, and that is linked very deeply into rotations. How long do you think it takes for a player to actually understand even a single full rotation?
That's a fantastic question, and if you really want to get into it and create a fantastic futsal team, you need more than 1 session a week. Players forget things, and I mean, when you do drum it, and it does get into them what a rotation is, you then need to make them understand that is not a set move that has to happen in that specific way. So again, rotations are extremely, extremely tricky. You can teach people a certain rotation, but then they need to figure it out themselves that, this is when we implement it, this is then when we change out of it. It's very, very difficult, very, very difficult. And people and players can't just go to a training session and try and pick it up in that one training session. Videos help. I know I used to do that for my team. I'd make videos and send it to them so that they could watch it and understand the movements that each player had to make. But yeah, to answer your question, it is very, very difficult, and it needs to be seen in multiple different ways, not just actually with the ball, but I use an iPad to show players as well. It's very, very tricky to learn.
I described it to my players as the rotation being a framework. So that sets our structure, but you have to play off of what is actually happening on the court, because we may want this particular way to be how we do it, but if that's not what's happening in front of them on the court, they shouldn't do it. They've got to respond to what's happening and use their brains.
Like I say, I've seen coaches teach, or coach if you like, players how to do a specific rotation and movement, and they think they've kind of, drilled it and got it down once those players are doing it unopposed with a ball. Now, that's fantastic, but like you said, once that's in a game, one player might do something a little bit wrong that changes everything, or the opposing team might do a certain defensive shape that counters what you're trying to do. So you can't create a team of robots. You need them, like you said, understand that it's a framework that you're trying to work to, but you can play around with that a little bit. Sometimes a player might do something else that creates a different opening. You need to have really smart players in futsal.
Off the back of this, at the centre of excellence, would you then say that the majority of the work that you do is technical or tactical?
We would hope that by the time they come to us, they have a pretty sound set of skills that they can use in this sport. A lot of the things we try to teach them are what rotations look like, how they have to move, why they have to move. A lot of it is mainly why. We don't try and teach them too many specific rotations, because when they go into the England team or when they go back to their club, sometimes it gets forgotten or teams do different things. But we definitely introduce it to them. We let them understand that you do need to move, and you're sometimes moving not for yourself but for another person. So a lot of the work is how to work as a three, attacking or defending. We don't work overly on rotations, really.
So it's fundamentals. Is it as basic as the 1-2s, parallels and diagonals, or is it slightly more advanced than that most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, like you pointed out some good things, those parallels and things like that, those little 1-2s are kind of a lot of the things that some players don't know or that they don't use enough of. We just trying to make them understand. I mean, again, because we only have them for 4 times in the year, it makes it very difficult to a lot of things that kind of need a continuation. A lot of those things that we try and teach them, like you said, are parallels, the 1-2s, diagonals, things that they might not know. Now, I suppose our jobs in the under 19s is just to give them a firm understanding and a firm base of which to grow from. Like I said, when I was playing, I didn't have that, and as soon as I got into the England team, I was lost. Now we're confident that a lot of the players that we send through have a fantastic base of which to kind of learn from. They won't be lost in that setup. I mean, I've got a list here of some players that have kind of come through and moved on from us to either the development team or the national team. Arthur Rogers, Max Kilman, Raj Palbambra, Jamie Shaw, Now all these players that are coming through now have a really good understanding of what they need to do. They wouldn't have that if the under-19s wasn't there, if you like. You know what I mean? So they're all on the same page once they get into that national team. And with only 4 sessions in that year, we just need to make sure that they have those firm, like you said, those 1-2s, the parallels, the understandings of how to attack and how to defend as a squad.
Do you think the improvement has been because of a greater interest in futsal for people looking to become coaches, and they've seen or heard or read that actually futsal could be something that's used to help develop players for football, so they become interested in it, and more people have been attending courses?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy with that. I think that's brilliant. I think a lot of the disappointing thing is a lot of futsal people get really hung up on this is futsal and it's only futsal and it can only ever be futsal and you're either a futsal player or a football player. Like, I think a lot of the advertising material that those same coaches are using are all ex-football players like Ronaldo and Messi, saying how much futsal helped them. So yeah, 100%, it's a fantastic development tool. Football coaches who want to kind of give their youth players a little bit of an edge or learn a little bit more about how they can improve their players, if that means them going to futsal courses and then delivering futsal throughout the winter or something like that, or the odd futsal session, then I'm all for it, and I'm happy that the interest is growing in that and that people recognise the benefits that futsal will give their teams.
Yeah, I think a part of the reason for them having to use these players like Neymar and Ronaldinho is because if you ask someone to name a futsal player, most of them are going to struggle. You might get lucky and they might know who Ricardinho and Falcao are, but other than that, it's not mainstream enough. And I think futsal needs football to make itself known at the moment. How long do you think it will take for futsal to be able to actually stand on its own in this country?
Yeah, I mean, it's an empty. I mean, I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't be able to put a date or a time or. Okay, yeah. So I mean, it would. I could easily say maybe 5 years. It will be able to stand around 10 years. I think the league structure needs to grow, and I don't think players will really see futsal as something that can stand alone from football until it is going to be a real viable career for a player. And I don't think futsal's anywhere near that at the moment in this country now. I don't see it as a problem going alongside football, and once the leagues grow and the teams get more serious, and hopefully TV can come in and things like that. But that's quite a way off, in my opinion. Yeah, it could be at least another 5 or 6 years.
Right, so we'll quickly finish on Ask the Coach, and our listener's question this week comes in from Victor Henry. He asks, I regularly watch futsal on YouTube. Could you see it being an Olympic sport soon?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll be honest, probably like 4 years ago, I was expecting it to be in Brazil.
Yeah.
The way all the other sports are set up in the Olympics, futsal fits in there perfectly. And I mean, it's a tricky one because football in the Olympics is so well attended. It's like if you just look at the Brazil and Germany match, the crowd there, it would be hard for anyone in the Olympics to say, yeah, we're going to drop football now and put futsal in. But I think that there is definitely scope to put it in there, and I think it would grow the sport immensely, especially in England, if it was in the Olympics.
I also would have expected it to be, if it was at an Olympics, it would have been this one that's just gone. But I wondered if the calendar this year for futsal played a part in that, because there's a World Cup, there's been the Euros as well. I just wonder if there was a feeling that it was quite a packed calendar, and to put another tournament in might have been too much.
So I've really enjoyed speaking to you today, and I'd love to have you on again in the future.
Thanks for your time, guys.